Everyone. We'll give a couple of minutes as attendees begin to trickle in. But we're really excited for the session today. We are talking with one of our favorite partners from the Impact team. Todd is joining us. He's the co-founder and the VP of Strategic Initiatives over there. So Todd, thank you for joining us. Do you want to give a little bit of a background on yourself for the audience before we jump into the questions?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I'm one of the co-founders here at impact.com. I started my career in the affiliate partnership space back in 1998. I was part of the team that started CJ, and then long and winding road to today.
Awesome. And then Will is joining us. Will is a fan favorite on Rockerbox webinars. Will, do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself for anyone who maybe hasn't met you before?
Yeah, of course. My name is Will Burgess. I run professional services here at Rockerbox. So that's all of the strategic advice and consulting that we offer on top of the Rockerbox SaaS platform. And I joined Rockerbox after a long and winding career in the agency world primarily.
Awesome. And I'm Ashley McAlpin. I'm our head of marketing here at Rockerbox, and I'm going to be moderating for us today. Before we get started, we do have a chat on the left side or the right side of your screen, excuse me. We like these conversations to be conversational. We have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask the panelists, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We like to take those as they come. We're not going to wait till the end to take questions. We want this conversation to be valuable to everyone in attendance. And so if there's something that you want to go a little deeper on, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat there. I'll go ahead and type so you can see where that is. And then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So the first question that we have today is how should brands think about measuring affiliate and partner-driven conversions in a multi-touch world? And Todd, I think I'll toss this one to you first.
Great. Okay. Well, I think the first thing is that, you need to look at what your company values most. Like what are your goals? What are you being goaled on to drive for the company? Things like, new customers or higher AOVs, lower discounting, other unique contributions, and make sure that you're able to capture and measure these metrics, because a lot of people struggle with that. They get measured on things and maybe the data isn't exactly apples to apples. So I think that's really kind of where you want to start. And then to get the most out of these metrics, you want to make sure that you're measuring the affiliates within the other marketing channels. So you're able to see that kind of consumer journey, really even at the transaction level. So all the touch points. So if you have all that data kind of in one place, it's definitely a good start. And then you have kind of the ability to pivot off of that as you go along, as you find more interesting facts or nuances to the data.
Yeah, I think that point about the consumer journey is really critically important, and that's how I primarily think about this problem as well, which is that some channels or some affiliate partners might be much better at closing conversion, and so it might be something that comes much further towards the end of a consumer journey, whereas others might be much more in that sort of introductory phase, and you would see them much earlier in the consumer journey. And I think being able to tell the difference when you are working in a kind of multi-touch world is incredibly important. It's also worth remembering that if you don't set up your attribution properly, then you're going to be looking at everything in a very siloed fashion. So if you're just looking at data for, say, a single walled garden and that's it, then it's going to be very hard for you to pick apart, well, what are my other channels doing in relation to this walled garden? Are they doing the introductory work and then it's a social network or something that then does a little bit work in the mid funnel, and then we have another affiliate partner that closes the deal? You really won't know, and you'll end up having a lot of data that is duplicated. So conversions will be getting credit in different places. Nothing will add up, and you won't really be able to compare apples to apples. So really important to understand that journey and make sure that everything is deduplicated from start to finish.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think that leads us really well into the second question, which is, I think assessing incrementality within the affiliate and partnership programs is notoriously challenging for some of the reasons you talk about, but really like due to the complexity of the conversion journey and kind of the nature of affiliate marketing, like as it stands, right? There's just a lot of nuances. So from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges in assessing that incrementality within affiliate and partnership programs, and how can those be addressed? And Will, I'll toss that back to you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is a very, very big topic and one that could be an entire webinar in its own right. So I'll just try and touch on, for me, the most important aspects of this. I think the challenge with affiliate specifically is that there are very different flavors of affiliate marketing. And some, as we spoke about in the previous question, some will probably act more like introducers, introducing a brand people have never heard of. Others act more like closers. So they might be offering a discount or some kind of promotion on a brand that maybe a consumer has already heard of, or certainly has visited their site and then maybe been served up a coupon at some point. Now, for obvious reasons, those are going to have very different incrementality. If I've already made the decision to convert, or I've already heard of a brand, then my incrementality might be a little bit lower. If I've never heard of the brand before, the incrementality is going to be much higher. Furthermore, incrementality changes over time based on how much competitor activity is there, how are your competitors pricing, how are your competitors operating in the media landscape against you, what are their pricing strategies, and what is your brand awareness and consideration look like? So all of these things are highly dynamic. It's not like we can ever say this is just what incrementality looks like for affiliates. It's a very, very fluid and changing world. And so that's really, really the challenge, is that it requires careful measurement. It requires you to think hard about which aspects of your affiliate campaign are doing what jobs, and then separating them out and measuring incrementality accordingly. So it's a big topic and one that requires a lot of planning and thinking to get right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Todd, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think the first challenge is just to determine, what makes a channel or a partner incremental. I think you alluded to this when you opened the topic up. It's not etched in stone. There's not a universal incrementality definition. I mean, I hear a lot, would we have gotten the sale anyway? I think that's an impossibility to measure. That's more of a intuitive kind of thing, and I'm not kind of a fan of that. So I think the first thing brands need to do is kind of get together and discuss, like, what do we think makes something incremental, and kind of agree on that definition. And then you also need to think about, when you're measuring a walled garden like paid search or programmatic, you, it's all one thing. Paid search is exactly what it says, right? It's buying keywords. You might have different geos and different search engines. You have your branded versus non-branded, but it's all the same thing. An affiliate is kind of a menagerie of things. And so when you're measuring affiliate as a channel and trying to figure out if it's incremental, you're really not seeing the whole picture. I mean, you are looking at the whole picture, and that's the problem. You need to look at the individual partners, or at the very least in like groups, like all the coupons and deals, or all the loyalty, or all the content, or all the creators, at a bare minimum, because they're all going to have different roles in that consumer journey, and they're going to come up at different parts. And so if it's probably the biggest mistake I see, is that they're trying to measure the channel, and it's really, the channel is a sum of its parts, but they're so disparate that you can't kind of say it's one thing. And I think when companies start saying, well, the affiliate channel we think is this, and they're measuring it as a whole, they're really mismeasuring it. So I think that's probably, one of the biggest challenges that I see.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that kind of speaks to one of the biggest challenges that I see, and that's that high risk of like overstated attribution, right? Like if a lot of brands are still operating with last touch and a last touch bias, and I think that affiliate kind of ends up just by the nature of what affiliate is kind of positioning itself in that place where then, to your point, if you're looking at the channel as a whole, you might miss you might miss some things or end up misrepresenting. And I think the way that we look at this, and Will, you could definitely speak to this more than I can, but we kind of see that solution as, marrying together multiple forms of measurement so that you're really starting to understand like the full picture of your customer, really your customer journey, like via like leveraging incrementality testing to like figure out like, really, is this causal, like what is the causal impact of the channel, but then also layering in MTA and kind of using some of these other methodologies to kind of solve for that, what could be really damaging to a brand if they're kind of operating under that last click bias.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other thing is a lot of incrementality testing for other channels is done in a method of just saying, well, we'll turn off a geo or we'll turn off the whole channel, and then we can see what sales we would have got anyway. And you can't do that with affiliate. Those links are out there and they don't turn on and off. So and if you do, you kind of wreck the program, right? Like when you're buying from a machine, I always say keywords don't have feelings. You can stop buying them or turn it off, and you know, Google's going to survive and the machine isn't going to really get upset. Whereas when, this is such a relationship based thing, you can, but it's hard to tell all your partners, we're going to stop working with you for a period of time. And then we're going to want to work with you again. It's just too many moving parts. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. That traditional kind of geo experiment framework is almost impossible to implement in any affiliate type of program. So it certainly is a much more challenging space in which to measure incrementality. It's not to say that it's impossible, but it's far, far harder than it would be with social or with search or anything like that.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to question number 3. And a reminder, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat and we will address those as they come. But we want to move to kind of this concept of like balance, right? Balancing attribution between affiliate efforts and other performance channels, like paid search or paid social, is one of the kind of thorniest challenges, I think, in marketing measurement. And we just started kind of having this conversation. So how do you balance that? And let's go back over. How do you balance that? And what does that look like for you when you're, speaking with brands? And
Do
I'll
you
throw
want me
that
to
one.
take that one?
Oh,
I'll take that.
I'll throw it to Will. I'll throw it to anybody.
Okay, I can take this one quickly. So I think in my mind, the first thing that you have to do is you have to have a single source of truth where you are measuring things on a level playing field and you're using the same KPIs for everything. If you don't have those things, then pretty impossible to compare. If you're at the sort of the start of your measurement journey, the start of your attribution journey, then maybe you're just using last click, but make sure you're using last click for everything and you're measuring everything on, let's say, a CPA or ROAS or something like that. Now, maybe as you go further, you get into multi-touch attribution and so on and so forth, and things start to get a lot more sophisticated. But you're still coming back to those fundamental principles: same KPI, same measurement method, single source of truth. Those, if you can get those right, then you have a great starting point. And at that point, you can then start to make really good decisions, informed decisions that are not based on biased data because you're using this KPI from over here and this other KPI from over there and something else, and just trying to intuit your way to it. You actually have a kind of solid, consistent data set on which you can start to make these balancing decisions.
yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think the one thing I hear where people get confused is this crediting logic, which is really important to affiliate, and attribution modeling, which is out beyond whether they're last click or whether they got credit for a sale. in whatever model you're using. Um, the last click, which is most common in affiliate, is a crediting rule. And as Will said, you can measure all of your channels on last click. And therefore, if paid search is last click, it gets credit. If affiliate is second to the last click, then it doesn't get credit. But the thing to remember about modeling is you're doing this after the fact, right? So all of these last click things happened, and now you're modeling it out. And that modeling keeps the costs the same, but it shifts the revenue contribution, right? So if affiliate got rewarded with $1 million of revenue on last click, once it's modeled, it could be plus or minus $1 million, right? So, one of the big things that I think people got really worked up is with GA4, they changed their modeling and it kind of worked against affiliate, and it's a little bit of a black box. So people don't really know why. They just saw the data shift. So it's tough because a lot of attribution is hard to understand. Like, why is it saying it's different? But it is, to me, kind of, the first thing to think about is, again, are we measuring everything correctly? As Will pointed out, is all the data in the right place in one place, that we're not trying to look at a report out of system A and a report out of system B and wondering why they don't match. I mean, I hear customers all the time, will say something like, I'm looking at the clicks within impact.com and they're not matching up with our Adobe Analytics. And I'm like, well, you're comparing clicks to visits. Those aren't the same things. In your mind, they are, but in reality, they're two metrics that are measured completely differently. So you can't compare them. And again, they're just doing their job and they're looking at data and they think that two things are the same thing, and they don't know that they're tracked or measured differently. So I think that's a big challenge. And then it's just, again, it's kind of getting a consensus on what is going to be the source of truth, and is all the data in there correctly? Because you can have a source of truth with bad data just as easily, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it speaks a lot to like really, one of the questions we got in the chat is, with so many reporting platforms available, what key factors should brands consider when selecting the right one for their needs? And I'll let each of you answer this, but I was just going to say, like, to your point, prioritizing a partner who is going to prioritize a data foundation is really paramount to everything else that you're going to do. Before you can talk about actually like modeling the data, you have to make sure that the partner that you're selecting is able to pull in the data that they need to actually model it, to actually give you an answer. And that often comes, and obviously we're biased, right? So Rockerbox is one of these platforms, but it comes through the relationships that we have with our partners, like impact.com, like the social channels, where we're able to pull this data at a more granular level than advertisers have access to themselves in a lot of cases, which helps us to build better models and really answer questions a little bit more directly. But Todd, Will, I'll let you both kind of chime in on your thoughts on that audience question as well.
Yeah, I think, this kind of almost goes into the next topic or question that we were going to go into, is kind of, where do you take data and put data? And I think, again, it comes down to getting consensus within the team as to what are we going to use, how are we going to, and where are we going to get the data and put the data. A lot of teams, that are running paid search or running affiliate are using the data in the platforms, right, to do their day-to-day jobs. But somebody has to look at all the data at once, right? And the teams need to look at it too and better understand. And I think the key is to, when you look at your data for your channel, and then you look at the source of truth data about your channel, how close are they? And how close are the other team's data? They're not going to be one-to-one, probably. So, is your data the closest or the farthest from the truth, right? Because that can kind of, you put in all this work, you've grown the channel, and then the source of truth kind of gives you a 20% haircut, and you're like, that's not fair, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, so to answer the question in the chat, what factors should brands consider when choosing a reporting platform? I think, yeah, I agree. The kind of dedication to accuracy and to ingesting good data and storing it securely, all of those things are just fundamental, right? That's table stakes. I mean, and there are quite a lot of things that should be considered table stakes alongside that, like having really great models that assign credit in a fair and accurate way. Beyond that, I would say take a really hard look at your media mix. What it is today, what are the most important channels to you today. Think hard about where you might go in the future. So if you have an intuition that in 1 or 2 years' time, you're going to be launching into CTV or something like that, you think that based on other brands your size, that's the next place you need to go, then find a partner that has great CTV integrations, and make sure that is true across all of the most important channels for you. So be it affiliate, search, social, you name it, you'll want a partner that has really robust methodologies and really good partnerships for ingesting data from all of those things.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have another question here in the chat before we move into question number 4. He asked, if I'm running an ad campaign and a customer is first reached through my Google ads, but ends up purchasing through an affiliate link later as part of a remarketing effort, should I consider both the cost of my ad campaign and the affiliate commission in the total cost of that sale, or just the cost of the affiliate side? And Will, I feel like this question is right up your alley.
Yeah. Yeah, you should include both for sure. Because if let's say that you took away your affiliate spend, and so the affiliate link was not there, so that the consumer did not have that touch point to push them over into conversion, then that conversion would not have happened. So affiliate should get credit for at least a part of that transaction, maybe not the entire thing, but as part of getting credit, it also needs to take credit, and for that credit to be efficient. And for you to understand what the efficiency is, you need to be able to measure the spend. So the spend should be attributed back to that conversion also.
And I think a good point to bring up on this webinar, as well as if you're an affiliate manager and this comes up in your team meetings, is that if the consumer journey were inverse, so affiliate was second to the last and paid search was the actual last click, there would be no affiliate cost. So there you might be attributing some of the sales revenue to the affiliate with no cost.
Mm-hmm.
With all the other channels, there is always a cost, even if it doesn't convert. So I think that's something to always keep on the table in front of everyone when you're talking, because I think it's a very important point. Yeah, but I agree with Will on all costs should be, but you're not looking at a single transaction, right? So yes, in this transaction, we had 3 paid clicks and last click was affiliate. So we had a commission. It might be very expensive, but when we look at our return on ad spend across all channels, we spent $1 million and we made 10 million, it's the math is simpler, right? You shouldn't chase individual transactions, because you're always going to find a transaction that was very expensive, and you're always going to find one that was free or very cheap. So that I would say in general, yes, you should combine them.
Yeah, a lot of these issues around attribution, to your point, they don't make a ton of sense when you're looking at the individual transactions, and you really have to take that kind of generalized view. And your description of affiliate cost is a really good example of that, because I mean, the way you describe it makes it clear why in a multi-touch attribution world, affiliate always is extremely efficient, because it's always getting partial credit for everything it touches, but you're only paying for those last clicks. And so it always has kind of an efficiency tailwind, if you like, on its side, just because of the structural nature of it, which is obviously great for the brand.
Yeah, I think the other challenge when it comes to costs is just more around placement fees. If a brand is paid a partner 10 grand for some period of time, you might get billed and pay that 10 grand a month later or before the placement. So allocating that 10 grand accurately when the placement was actually taking place. So if it was a 10-day placement, it's $1,000 a day, right? You could add that cost in. So it's important to make sure those costs are there too, to get the whole.
Yep. Yep.
That's a
Ashley, do you want me to opine on the question on the page?
Yes, we can. I was going to lead into it, but if you're ready to go, you go for it.
No, I wasn't sure. I mean, I feel like we've been kind of dancing around it already. I wanted to make sure I
No,
don't
we
miss my
have,
chance to say a bit more.
we have. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think there's sort of two truths that are maybe worth mentioning in this topic of data integration. One of which is that more data is always good. There's, the cost of moving data and storing data is so low now that in general, the more data you have, the better, because you may always find a use for it later. But if you don't collect it in the moment, it could be gone, and at that point you've missed an opportunity. So that's one thing. The second thing is that it can be sometimes costly to set up the systems to collect that data. So let's give an example. Let's say that I'm collecting conversion data from my site and I'm sending it in a batch file to Rockerbox, but it's a lot of work for me to get geolocation data of some kind into that conversion data. Like, let's say I wanted to attach DMAs. Let's say I wanted to attach a flag that tells me whether this is a new customer or an existing customer, something like that. If I had that data, if I was able to send that data to Rockerbox, I'd be able to do something like look at all of the conversions that were coming through from affiliate in a multi-touch world, in a last click world, whichever one you want. And I'd be able to understand, are my affiliate driven customers more likely to be new customers to the brand that I've never seen before? Are they more likely to live in certain parts of the country than others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Just to add on layers of data, you can add on insights. And suddenly I'm able to say, okay, I understand even better the impact that affiliate is having, because it looks like it's more likely to drive a new customer than an existing customer, which means that I am tipping people over the edge into conversion who are otherwise on the fence and had never bought from me before. And so getting those kinds of insights, I think, is just phenomenally valuable for any brand. And I think really speaks to the value of having as much data integrated with your advertising systems as you possibly can. I don't know, Todd, if you agree with any of that.
That's so well said. I think, if you don't have the data, you can't measure it. And I'd rather have more data than you want to measure, so that as things come up, questions get asked, we have that data, we can measure it, right? Not, oh, we don't have that, now we need a project to get that data in. And are we getting it back to a certain date, or is it at a certain point moving forward? And so it makes it hard to do, month over month or year over year comparisons. So it's definitely more is better. And when it comes to ingesting data, I mean, a lot of our clients are taking their data out of Impact, and we have a lot of ways of extracting that, mainly through APIs, but all the data is available. So, that can be a little overwhelming. And so you need to work with someone to say, what data is most important. And if you're doing this internally, a lot of times the teams this is a project, they want to be done with it. So you see it in integrations too. They want to do the least amount of work to say we did it, and they shortcut it, and they're not capturing, let's say, new to file. And that's a really important piece of data. A lot of companies value that, and it exposes things that change your perspective. And, the one thing about data is it is a perspective on your business. And the more perspectives you can have on your business, the more you can make informed decisions. If you have only one view of your business, it can be very narrow and incomplete. And then you're making decisions that actually don't work. And you're kind of wondering, why didn't it work? And then you're chasing, fixing it and figuring it out and wasting a lot of time I've always used this analogy, like your data is this giant cube, right? And for most of us, we look at it from one side. But if I turn that cube and go, here's that same data, but you're looking at it from this side. Now, when you go back and look at it from the perspective you always look at it, you see it differently because you've seen that other perspective. And so again, the more perspectives you have on your data, the more you understand it and the more you can ask smart questions and get the right answers. So I think, that is probably really important. And also back to one of my earlier comments is that, you need to break out affiliate from being a channel. It really isn't a channel. It's a program. It's a program. It's a bunch of different. I mean, if I were the head of business development for a company and I went and did 5 completely different biz dev deals, no one would call that a channel. They might call them channel partnerships as a team or a department, but it isn't a channel. It's just 5 different partnerships that are driving business in different ways. And that's really what affiliate is, or partnerships are. So calling it a channel, I think, causes people to want to look at it as a channel, and that's where it gets mismeasured as well because it's not granular enough.
I think that's a good call out. And I do think it's easy because we're trying to bucket everything else. It's easy to kind of bucket partnerships or affiliates into this like channel mentality. So that's a good call out. So, moving on to the next question, I think when partnerships are evaluated in isolation, and we've been talking about this data piece for a while, right? It's easy to miss the bigger picture. I think Todd, you kind of alluded to that earlier. If you're just looking at the whole versus if you're looking at the sum of its parts. But especially when budgets are on the line, I think that having the right data stitched together across different channels, marketers can start to see not just how individual partners perform, but how they contribute to the broader mix, which is kind of this unified insight that we're talking about. And it can be incredibly powerful, not just for optimization, but also for justifying expansion or rethinking kind of your media mix. So my question here is, how can marketers use these unified insights to make a case for expanding or refining their partner ecosystem? And Todd, I will pass this one to you.
Yeah, I think getting to know your data is important because what you're doing is you're not showing a report that you downloaded or a report on a screen and asking for more budget or saying this shows why we need to get more partners. You're telling a story using data. It's storytelling. I hear this all the time from clients when they talk about how they navigate internally, right? Like how do they get more budget or more resources? And it's about storytelling. And so the data proves that the story you're telling is true, but the storytelling is what becomes compelling and what people can hear and kind of digest. If I put up a report and we all 3 look at it, we might all have 3 different takeaways. So it's sending someone a report or showing a report isn't really the right strategy. You need to tell a story. You need to figure out what am I going to ask for? What do I want to do? What do I need to ask for? And how can I create a story around this data that will help people understand it and I'll get what I want, right? So whether that's budget or resources or both. So I think expanding partners, you're looking at, which partners are driving the most value to the brand and how can we identify and find more partners like that, or what partners aren't we working with, or we aren't working with in the way that we should be. And again, the data helps you to uncover that. And then the storytelling kind of, conveys that information.
Yeah, it's a good call out. And I think it's interesting to talk about storytelling there because it's true, right? Like Will, to your point earlier, like it's easier to access data today than it ever has been before. But also if that data is not, if you can't put it together in a way that helps you to accurately is key, right? Tell a story, then what's the point, right? What's the point of all the data if it doesn't actually help you build a story around what's working and what's not? And a story that not just can be believed, but that you actually believe and that your stakeholders can believe. But Will, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think I would sort of call back to what I said earlier about this idea of a sort of single source of truth, the importance of that as far as is ever possible. But recognizing that that's sometimes just a sort of unattainable ideal. And even when you have a single source of truth, to Todd's point, there are many ways in which you could interpret that, and different people can tell different stories looking at the same chart or the same report. I often tell my clients this, which is that marketing is the art of making decisions with uncertain information. And the more that you can wrap your head around that concept, I think the more comfortable you will get making decisions with the data that's available to you. Because however much I've spoken about there being a single source of truth, and that's what you should aim for, the fact of the matter is you're never quite going to get there. There's always going to be something that isn't exactly lined up. Like yes, your measurement tool for some reason treats all affiliate the same, right? Like let's talk about that. That's obviously not quite the case. So even in a single source of truth, you'll be led to that issue. And the more that you can just bring in your own judgment, experience, intuition when examining data and when understanding how to get takeaways out of it and how to make decisions off of it, the better. Because that kind of perfection in data is not really ever going to be attainable. What you really should be aiming for is the best data that you can possibly get, and not worry too much about, will I ever get to the place where it's perfect? If you constantly wait to try and get to perfect data, you will just never make any decisions whatsoever. So get comfortable with the data that you have, make it the best that it possibly can be, tell stories around it, unify it, and keep moving.
Yeah, great call outs. It's probably the most challenging part of marketing, right? Okay, so finally, I think it's important to kind of leave these conversations with like a look ahead. How do you see the evolution of partner measurement, and what should brands be doing right now to prepare for that, especially in such an evolving landscape? And Todd, I'll pass this one to you first again.
Yeah, I think the biggest asset in a company are curious people. It's easy to go to work every day, log in if you're managing an affiliate program, and run, performance by partner, and, click around, call some partners. But I see some of the best run programs have very curious people in there that are always looking at data, always trying to figure out what they don't know. And I think if that's not you, finding someone who can play that role within your team or in the company, an analyst or whatever, that is always kind of uncover interesting data points, right? Interesting perspectives on your data to help you better understand the channel vis-a-vis all the other channels. So I think, again, on the evolution, I think you can no longer operate in a silo. Even though you might have a source of truth kind of at the marketing team level, if you're an affiliate manager, you want to replicate that data within the platform that you're using, by adding all of your other paid channels in there, maybe even having your owned and earned in there, although maybe set to not credit, but just to be measured, so they don't dedupe against, your affiliates. But I think that's really important so that you're able to make decisions within the platform with all that data being considered, as opposed to I'm only looking at affiliate, and I might be making decisions that I would have made a different decision if I could have seen all these other channels. We have within our reporting a suite of reports called Optimize, and they help brands understand things like incrementality, crediting concerns, participation value, things that you should understand based on how you're going to set up contracts, how you're going to buy paid placements, how you're going to, are there partners that are typically in the consumer journey that aren't getting credit, that you're going to probably lose them participating in your program eventually if they're not earning enough money, or they're going to devalue you And now you're not going to have that mind share with them, right? Like, they work with a lot of brands, and whoever's paying them the most, they're leaning in with those brands. So it's important that you understand that and can do things to make sure they are getting compensated, even though they aren't able to consistently win on last click. I think those are really important. Um, and then, if your affiliate platform doesn't support that, then you're going to have to really rely on that source of truth and that granularity within it. And you're going to have to be willing to go in there by yourself and pull that data and look at that data and slice and dice that data, as opposed to kind of getting it served to you at a weekly or monthly meeting and having to kind of figure out what you're looking at in real time, right? So it's harder to tell a story. It's harder to, get those different perspectives on the same data and come to the meeting better prepared and better understanding what's going on.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned curiosity. I've actually always recruited for a combination of curiosity and intelligence, because I always felt like if someone is curious, then they're naturally going to find problems and they're going to explore solutions. And if they're intelligent, then they're probably going to be smart enough to solve those problems that they find.
Yeah.
So it's an incredibly potent combination if you can find those sort of amazing individuals. I'll build on some of the other things that you said, if I may, which are that in order to sort of think ahead and future-proof yourself, you should always be thinking about what your partners are offering up in terms of data, in terms of measurement. And if they are not offering up the things that your curiosity leads you to demand, then you should ask yourself why. If they're not integrated with platforms like Rockerbox, or if they're not providing those measurement tools that you mentioned in-house, then why is that? What is it that they are? What are the questions that they're avoiding answering, if you like? And the more that you can put pressure on your partners to provide those answers, then I think the better your marketing will be, and you can just start pushing for better answers, better solutions, better integrations, and your overall program will be much, much better because of it.
Yeah, those are great points. And Sam had a question in the chat. Sam said we're using Optimize to change our commission structures based on where we see the most incremental value. It's been challenging to find a way to credit in a way that's mutually beneficial. Any advice on how to best approach these conversations with partners? Do either of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can do that. Well, one thing, and it depends on the partner, but if you've worked with them for a while and you trust them and you understand their business model well, we do offer a way to pay them on CPC. So they're getting paid for referring traffic. Maybe they are typically higher in the funnel. I know a lot of people get really nervous about CPC because they think there could be fraud. I think our technology is pretty bulletproof there, especially if you know and trust the partner. I wouldn't put just everyone on CPC. And I'm not going to get into all the nuances there, but it's going to protect you. The other is adjusting the commission rate higher for when they do win, to compensate them for when you wish they were earning something when they were more upper funnel. So maybe you pay all your affiliates on average 8%, and you might move this partner to 12 or 15%, and it kind of offsets the commissions that you think that they should have earned. And then lastly, we will be releasing something this year. I'm not sure if it's something that's coming out by our IPX in Austin next month, but the month next month. But there will be the ability to take a conversion and separate the commissions to 2 or more partners based on specific logic. So, if a certain type of partner in group 1 or wins, and a certain type of partner in group 2 is involved, I want to compensate that partner as well. So that'll also help solve for that.
Awesome. Sam said, just to clarify, we can offer first click credit and last click credit separately.
Yeah, you do have to decide when they're both a first click and a last click are winners. Only currently only one can win. So you do have to set a priority that, if I'm a first click, the only thing I don't like about first click, I mean, last click, nobody is going to argue about which click is last click. It's clear. This is the last click. First click is basically a look back window. So if you have a 10-day look back window and I send a click 10 days in 1 minute, I'm the first click, but I'm not, because you'd only start measuring and crediting within a 10-day window. And then if your first click is, 2 first clicks in the first hour of your window, you could argue they both are the first click, or which was the first click, right? So first click is very nebulous to me. But a lot of brands like it and they work with it and their publishers are happy. So, you can make it work if you can really figure out the data. The key is the look back window. But that's another way you can do it. So yeah, there's lots of options. It's trying to figure out what makes the most sense for you and for your partners. And I think the key here, no matter what you do, is being transparent and having that conversation with the partner so that you just don't change how they earn money and not tell them, right? And not use it as a negotiation to maybe get them to do more for you, or to make sure they know that you did that so that you're taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you didn't even mention kind of cross-device and being able to understand, well, was there a first click on one device that then converted on a different one, but it was the same user, and how do you measure that? So I agree with you 100% on the kind of first click issues. I would say I guess I would just sort of generalize the conversation a little bit more. If you're talking about just having tough conversations with partners in general, how do you do that? I think one of the best things is just to bring data. Don't just tell a partner that you're ending a relationship and not give them a reason, because clearly you would have a reason. Budgets are tight. Everyone has to make money. It's a tough business. We all know that. But if you're making a decision based on Rockerbox data, you're not seeing the value from a certain publisher, then take that data to the publisher, show them how you're making this decision, and have a conversation about it. And if they have something that they're looking at that tells a very different story that they want to compare, then give them the time to do that, to make that case, because maybe they know something that you don't, and there's always a conversation to be had.
Yeah, same with lowering commissions. Just lowering the commission and not communicating is, I understand if you're lowering the commission for dozens or hundreds or thousands of partners at once, it's hard to have that conversation, but you should for sure have it with the top, few that are driving the most volume. And again, as Will pointed out, sometimes just reviewing the data and why you're making that decision, they may have a counter perspective that you didn't consider, or they could make adjustments because they didn't understand what your goals were, right? And they hear the same thing from other brands and they say, this is how we deal with it. So let's try to test there, right?
Great points. And thank you for the questions. If we don't have any other questions in the chat, I will go ahead and wrap us up. We will be sending this recording to everyone who was registered today. And you can feel free to forward that if there's someone else in your office who might benefit from the conversation as well. Todd, we want to thank you for joining us on a Rockerbox webinar. We really appreciate your insight and we appreciate your partnership with impact.com. And Will, as always, thank you for being a willing participant. I know that you love it when the marketing team grabs you for another webinar. So we appreciate you both. And everyone else, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much. And Rebecca said it was very insightful. Thank you all. We will all chat soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.